back to the Copper Room here in Brussels, and also for the participants who are joining us remotely through live stream. We're about to start our parallel tracks, but I'm sad to add that I need to share some bad news with you first. If you're interested in the implementation of artificial intelligence and discussing issues around privacy and the Data Act, I'm afraid you've come to the wrong room, or you dialed into the wrong channel for that matter. So that session is currently being broadcasted in the ARC. Should you want to listen and learn about interoperability solutions for automated, proactive, and online public services, I kindly need to ask you to mobilize to the Silver Room, which is just adjacent to this room, or to the Silver Channel, for that matter. But if you're in for a strategic session on the next generation digital government with an animated roundtable discussion on digital-ready policymaking, then you've come to the right place indeed. Because our session here will focus on digital-ready policymaking as an enabler of digital government and how it could minimize compliance costs for administrations under the Interoperable Europe Act. Our panel members will present and discuss the current approaches taken by the European Commission and some member states to implement innovative digital-ready policymaking processes that enable the digital government of the future. And to facilitate, to streamline, and to moderate those discussions, I am glad that I can leave this track into the very capable hands of Sven Schade, who is working as a scientific project leader, digital economy at the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. At JRC, Sven focuses on multidisciplinary interoperability, open innovation, and regulatory learning, which makes him, I believe, the moderator of choice for this session on the next generation digital government. Sven, please take it away.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and welcome all. Welcome back after the coffee break. Good morning. It is still morning. I mean, we heard already a lot of things earlier today, but we are still before lunch. And really welcome to this session on digital-ready policymaking, which you already heard during the keynotes today, is really an important topic at the very core of digital government and actually making the Interoperable Europe Act a reality. So we're really here now from our distinguished panelists, and I'm already inviting to the stage our four panelists, please, to come. This is Frank Leymann. He is the head of international relations at the Digital Transformation Office at the Federal Public Service for Policy and Support in Belgium. Please come and take your seat. Then we have Zofia Girani, also from our commission working on digital-ready policymaking. She's actually the team lead on the file and very passionate about co-creation and knowledge sharing. Then we have Peter Kustor. He's the head of department in the Directorate General for Digitalization and E-Government in the Austrian Federal Chancellery, also a top expert in interoperability and e-government. And we have, again, our very own Frank Noël from the Publication Office of the European Union, where he is a director for data, information, and knowledge management. So here we have our panel. And we'll actually dive deeper into some of the topics that were already introduced yesterday in a dedicated workshop on semantic interoperability and digital-ready policymaking. We'll hear about some insight from the workshop yesterday, but first we will dive into the topic, hearing from the experiences from Frank, Zofia, Peter, and Frank Noël. To facilitate also afterwards an engagement and an engaged discussion, please be aware that we do have a Slido. If you go to the Slido for SEMIC 2024, this is a copper room. So basically, you can ask your questions during the entire session. Start already now, start the voting. We will get back towards the end of the session to the most voted questions to ask our panelists what is of your most interest. I think with this, without further ado, I stop here and hand over to Frank Leymann to explain us a bit more about the council conclusions we heard earlier today and also about the user needs. Please, Frank, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I need my glasses.
Take your time.
Okay, so we have had quite some hectic 6 months for the presidency. you can imagine that being at the end of a legal exercise, everyone wants to finish whatever they have started. So we were a bit under pressure. Just to give you a few figures, this week I tried to count the number of events we did. We are close to 600. 575 was the last figure I calculated. We closed more than 70 interinstitutional agreements, and we negotiated around 30 council-level mandates. So the colleagues from the Perm Rep have been very busy, and most of the time it was between January and March, because it takes time to get everything published, translated, and so on. So these were very hectic moments. We on our side, we were more active with organizing ministerial meetings, conferences, and technical meetings. With regards to all the regulations that were on our plate, I think we managed to finalize all of them with the exception of one, which was the one on privacy, because there's still some big diversions amongst the member states, so we will hand that over to our Hungarian colleagues. And for the rest, most of it was discussions around digital challenges and governance in general, with a focus on interoperability, on green IT, and on open data, amongst others. All the meetings we did had basically one goal, which is to prepare and negotiate the Council conclusions, which are now titled the Council Conclusions on the Future of the European Digital Policy. You may have seen that. It's actually, or you could call it a to-do list for the next commissioner on what the countries, the member states think should be done between now and 2030 with regards to digitalization. The document really covers quite an extensive list of action items. It reaffirms the digital sovereignty in an open manner and says that it is essential for the Union to chart its own path on digital transformation. So we really want to focus on our own independency. It talks about digital rules and governance. It talks about the social effects of digitalization and the dangers we need to address. It talks about skills, infrastructure, strategy, green transition. You know, I think all the items that we've been talking in the last years are addressed there with a suggestion on what to do in the coming years. So, as I said, it's a resume of what needs to be done to become digital ready, and of course the digital ready policy making, of which is the discussion of today, really fits into there. Just on a personal note, I think we need to pay attention to, for me personally, two things. It's the economical impact on digital markets. So I think we need to work a bit closer together. It's a bit like what Markus Richter said just before the coffee break. Now is really time to get into action there. Support the green transition, I think it goes without saying. And do a little bit of more of research and innovation. If you see what other continents are doing, we should not lag behind. So paying attention to innovation is, of course, a good input for other economics effect later on. My second aspect, and I will finish with that, is that these social economic effects that digitalization takes, I mean, you all agree with digitalization is going at a really fast speed. We've had a lot of regulation lately. Now we will pass into a phase more of implementation of that. So there is a danger that some citizens will not be able to cope with that, will not be skilled enough. So the digital skills, I think, is important, as well as improving the digital infrastructure of the EU. Already before the break, there was a big discussion on that. So I also agree that this is something important to take into account. So I'll leave it to that. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent, Frank, and congratulations for all the big achievements which could be indeed reached during the Belgian presidency. We heard a lot about the Interoperable Europe Act, of course, before, but there have been so many more achievements, including then also the list for what comes next. So maybe just to follow up on this one, because at the end, with what you just outlined, what do you think is really needed to also reach this status of a more, let's say, digital-ready society that actually the policy making should serve?
Yeah, thank you. Well, we've gone already pretty far, yeah, so let's acknowledge that at least.
Yeah.
There's still a lot to be done. Personally, I think if you look at the document of the Council conclusions, they talk a lot about what the Commission has done and will do and what the Member States have agreed to do. I personally miss one key element in there, which is the citizen. Yeah. I ask myself, have we forgotten a little bit the citizen? I mean, he should be around the table when we write these conclusions. I very much believe in co-creation. So I think we should be more active in asking our citizens what they want on that journey of digitalization, how they want it, what means they prefer to use. I mean, it's our end customer we work for. If I translate that into commercial terms, we build all these services for our citizens, and by the way, for ourselves. Yeah. So I think we could pay a little bit more attention to that, because if we do that and we take them on board, the uptake of the services we will build will be higher. And isn't that the end goal and the best measure of success, is that our citizens and our industry use the services that we build?
Excellent. I think we can take this up also later on. Maybe also we get questions from the audience related to exactly this more citizens dimension and also the monitoring and impacts. Let's keep this in mind for a little bit later. Thanks a lot, Frank. And then pass the floor to Sofia to tell us a bit more what is actually happening in relation to the Commission itself. What is happening in digital-ready policy making in the European Commission? Sofia,
Yes,
please.
thank you, Sven. And it's really great to be here with among such experienced colleagues, as well as a curious audience, which I can confirm based on yesterday's pre-conference workshop on digital-ready policy making and semantics. So I do trust that you will keep this curiosity and bombard us with many, many questions. So indeed, I would like to share today my passion about digital-ready policy making and specifically what we do about it in the Commission. And I'm super pleased that already this morning you were exposed to these terms numerous times, which means that in-house in the Commission, it gains now importance and visibility. So what is digital-ready policy making? I would say it's rather simple. We want to achieve that policy design and policy implementation get much closer. So it sounds rather easy, but to get there, it's a bumpy road because it needs really a new attitude, specifically on the one hand from policymakers who used to create and address societal problems from the ivory tower without really consulting citizens. Or we have, of course, now better regulation colleagues who will shout that, no, Sofia, we have stakeholder consultations and many channels. Yes, we do, but maybe not as effective as it could be. But I get closer. They not necessarily consult implementers, meaning IT professionals, data experts, or those who are running the services on ground. So this is quite a challenge now to engage them and help them to get this discussion from a policy angle with the implementers. And the other way around, implementers needs to be empowered and dare to step in already at the time of policy design. So for me, this is really the challenge and the beauty of digital-ready policy making. And I also believe that it's really a powerful tool, and it was really timely that governments start to recognize it, because policymaking in general is a precious tool in governments' toolkits to address societal problems. And now that nowadays these problems are partially can stem from digital technologies, or usually also be solved thanks to digital technologies, it's important that it's already acknowledged during the policymaking process itself. So what we do so far in the Commission, I would say that this is really a very nice organic journey and path which we took during the couple of last year, sorry. So it's really started something bottom up, and it grew from interoperability because 7 years ago, with my colleague Cécile Gouache, we just inherited the actions legal interoperability. This layer must be familiar for many of you who read the European Interoperability Framework, and where legal interoperability talks about the need that member states and administrations working under different legal frameworks are able to work together, and that they address eventual legal barriers which do happen when they want to collaborate. And that time we started to think, okay, but why to wait until these problems emerge? Why not to be proactive and try to avoid them up front? And for that, we need policymakers. So we need to get them and ensure that they create policies which cater for digital considerations, specifically look into potential interoperability barriers, and design the policies wisely. And this was basically the storyline which we started in-house and coined also the term digital-ready policymaking, inspired by Denmark practice at the time. And during the past years, we did quite a lot of discussion, workshops, as well as guidance. We ended up in the Commission-owned Better Regulation tool, where we defined digital-ready policymaking, underline the importance of multidisciplinary teamwork, and we also defined some key components and ingredients of that, including reuse of data, reuse of IT systems, but our starting point was user-centric thinking and user-centric processes. So this is what's there, and now time is changing, because we reached the momentum this year and during the past months eventually that finally, even in the Commission, this concept got traction, and we are at the moment of mainstreaming it. I dare to hope that it's partially the results of all that groundwork we did during the past years, but I cannot admit at the same time that certainly external calls like the Belgian Council conclusions, or even a couple of years ago, the Berlin Council conclusion or declaration did where member states already called upon the Commission to act upon digital-ready policymaking, and now very recently do trainings for that. And finally, I would say that our secret weapon, which made this change, that now Commission is really taking digital-ready policymaking very seriously, it was the Interoperable Europe Act and its specific famous article, Article 3, which will mandate from January next year running so-called interoperability assessments. So public administration will do so before taking a decision about any binding requirement which affects trans-European public services, basically cross-border interoperability. And you can see the similarity here. So the call from the Interoperable Europe Act, watch out and do an assessment before you create a binding rule, before you table an act, for example. And this is the mantra also of digital-ready policymaking. So this is a very nice joint area where digital-ready and the Interoperable Europe Act are hands in hand and give us a good munition to go forward.
Well, thanks a lot, Sofia, also to give us a bit more the narrative and the journey where this all came from. Already last year in Madrid there was a workshop and a discussion on digital ready, but it's certainly also today with the keynote and the opening statements, we really saw that there's a step change even in less than a year. You finished your intervention with the Interoperable Europe Act and the interoperability assessments, which are mandatory for the member states, but also, of course, for the Commission itself. So can you say maybe a bit more what the Commission intends to do to actually implement the interoperability assessments?
Yes, with pleasure. So already my Director General gave you a bit of hint in her previous speech where she mentioned that the Commission is now setting up an approach to digital-ready policymaking, which will rely on 3 main pillars. And these are the digital checks, which Commissioner Hahn in his welcoming message also mentioned, then targeted guidance, and eventually a sort of digital statement. I will quickly tell you what is each pillar about, but the main element that all of these help eventually to ensure that the Commission will be compliant with the Interoperable Europe Act and runs interoperability assessment when it's needed. So how? The digital checks will be a very simple set of few questions, basically 4 questions, but the importance is that it comes very early at the policy design. So policy officers, at the moment they plan their initiative, and in the Commission area there is even a planning tool for that. So when they enter this request, they have to answer 4 questions, including your proposal, will it foresee any kind of data exchange, data sharing? Will it try to automate or digitalize stakeholders' existing processes? Will it think of reusing or using any IT solution? or potentially would be digital public services in scope. And if to any of these there is a yes, then basically the policy team will get an early warning that watch out, there is a chance that you need to comply at the end of your journey with the interoperability assessment requirement, but in any case, there is really a high chance that you have a digital dimension to take it seriously in the policy design. So then the second pillar will exactly help the teams to go through in this policy design with digital considerations in mind and provide targeted inputs and guidance at each of the main milestones of the policy journey. And then all this will be wrapped up in the kind of digital statement at the time when the draft act is tabled for in-house consultation within the Commission. And this digital statement will identify the concrete requirements of the upcoming proposal with digital dimension, their data and IT solution angle, and it will also include the interoperability assessment for the given policy proposal if it applies. So this is our big plan, and to do that, of course, wish us good luck, and also share your ideas, because now it's all about implementation and put it on the ground, and also building a functioning and user-centric service to our own policy and IT teams who will supposed to work together in multidisciplinary to solve this.
Oh, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. I think this is also, it's important to also share what is done in the Commission, because at the end we can also learn from each other and also see what member states are doing and see if there is some approaches to be reused. We heard before from Belgium, we heard that Denmark did a lot on digital-ready policy making, but of course also Austria was one of the pioneers working on digital-ready legislation. So Peter, could you explain a bit more what you have been up to in Austria?
Yeah, thank you very much. Congratulations to Frank and to the Belgian presidency for such a wonderful presidency and a successful presidency, and of course for hosting that event here. It's excellent to end the presidency with such a great event. And of course, congratulations to the Commission as well as to all the member states for being able to close the file of the Interoperable Europe Act and to put it on track and into reality. So the challenges are still ahead of us. I guess I'm supposed to talk a bit about the digital-ready legislation experience we have in Austria, and also one project which is closely linked to the European Commission, which is the TSI project we had in the past. So just to put in a nutshell where we come from as a starting point, similar situation like we heard from Markus Richter in Germany. We do have a federal country with 9 provinces, and the legislative as well as executive powers are split between the different levels, which raises already possible interoperability issues internally, not only cross-border interoperability issues. We do have legislative guidelines and handbooks on legislative techniques since decades. This is pretty clear, and we do have supporting instruments, digital supporting instruments like our e-law procedure, where we have a seamless process from the very first drafting process by a ministry of a law and sending out for scrutiny and handing over to the parliament and then publishing as authentic electronic version on the internet. We do that since 20 years already, so there is quite some experience in the process there and in that part of legislation. And for drafting, we have since more than 10 years already an ICT guidelines where we do offer a document with a checklist for elements which should be taken into account when drafting legislation and when it comes to elements which are combined with digital implementation or consequences aspects there. But As a whole, we do have, of course, like most of the others, a regulatory impact assessment with different fields of aspects which need to be taken into account in the formal regulatory process. And the impact dimensions we are considering there are financial ones, environmental, consumer protection policy, macroeconomic impacts, business impacts, administrative costs for citizens and businesses, social impacts, children and youth impacts, equality of women, men, etc. But what is missing yet there is the digitalization impact as such. So this is not part of the formal regulatory impact assessment we are performing. And there we started the project, the TSI project, funded by the European Commission in 2022, and that ended up in 2023. And I can say it was quite a very interesting experience we had. The title was Identifying Strategies for the Development and Implementation of Digital-Ready Legislation in Austria. So what we did there is we started from the as-is analysis in Austria, and we performed with the contractor quite some benchmarking, experiencing best practices from other fields and areas and countries. So we focused on Denmark, but also took into account the situation and the plans of Germany, of Norway. We had also sessions with the European Commission. So we tried to experience how practices are out there, and from that the contractors derived business requirements and the business case as such, and developed a to-be model for Austria, and then at the end an implementation roadmap. And it turned out actually that exactly the point I already raised was crucial, to insert the digital ready legislation aspect into the regulatory impact assessment in our process. So to make the real case there and put it also mandatory by law to include the digitalization aspects into the regulatory impact assessment in Austria. That was the main element which was developed there. When it comes to the content behind it, was interesting that our guidelines we had already in place were not too far away from the 7 principles Denmark also had on the table. So, and of course, elements of the EIF, etc. So these are very closely related to each other. So, of course, we would need still also for the Interoperable Europe Act a bit of updating our guidelines, but still we do have already in place quite some sound basis with our document there, with our questionnaire and our guidelines there. And an interesting thing is when it comes to the question of who is doing the job and who is putting the expert's eye on it, because for us it's clear in the regulatory impact assessment it is primarily the organization and the ministry, etc., itself preparing the impact assessment and analyzing the own drafts and ideas, and then send it out for public scrutiny. And it turned out that to have one entity keeping the overall view with a multidisciplinary team would very much of help, and that is the experience I derived from the Danish experience there. So this would be somehow to say our to-be model to move into that direction. I cannot see for the moment when we will be able to establish such a central unit and such a multidisciplinary team there. It will depend mainly also on our future government. We have elections in September this year. So after that, we will see some movements and changes and developments inside the different government agencies and ministries, and perhaps there will be a chance to put into the regulatory impact assessment the digitalization aspect as such, plus the establishment of such a multidisciplinary team, which was the recommendation at the end from the TSI project I mentioned. So this is put in a nutshell there.
Oh, excellent. No, thanks a lot, Peter. It's really great to see, even with a very long history, to still try to boost and take the next steps for digital-ready policy making. And the TSI project is the technical support instrument, which is inside the Commission, managed by DG Reform to exactly support the technical advancement of public sector modernization. And of course, it's also eligible to address digital topics. One question to you, Peter. If you now look at the Interoperable Europe Act, and I mentioned the interoperability assessments before, what would be the biggest challenges you see and the kind of priorities you would expect from the Commission to actually address?
Well, for me, the main challenge is, of course, starting with the definition we do have there in place for what is to be assessed. And to be honest, I mean, I was the representative of Austria negotiating in the Council Working Group that act, and still it is hard to grasp the full scope and spectrum of what exactly is meant there and what exactly is covered there. And we have seen from all the green cards this morning that you all have read, of course, the Interoperable Europe Act. Nonetheless, I would like simply to read the definition of binding requirements. And this is fun, because the binding requirement means an obligation, prohibition, condition, criterion, or limit of a legal, organizational, semantic, or technical nature, which is set by a union entity or a public sector body concerning one or more trans-European digital public services, and which has an effect on cross-border interoperability. And exactly before deciding on such a binding requirement, you need to perform the interoperability assessment. But if I put it very bluntly, we are not talking here only about legal obligations, where we do have an assessment. So it is more than our digital-ready legislation thing I just presented before, because it's not only part of the regulatory impact assessment when drafting a law, etc., but it's even triggered if somebody is setting a limit of technical nature. If you take some parts of it. So just a very naive example. If I'm a municipality out there and I have some online service in place, and the administrator of that service, which could be used, of course, cross-border as well, the administrator of the service puts a limit like 5 megabytes for uploading some document there. Is this already triggering the interoperability assessment? Because he's putting a limit of a technical nature that could have some impact on cross-border service. But is it really what we are meaning here? I guess not really. For me, one main challenge here is to find some serious common understanding of what we are talking here about, and we should not over-exaggerate the elements there, but we should find a practical, feasible manner of how to handle that. So this would be my wish, to first start with a clear definition and feasible handling of the obligations there.
Excellent. So very concrete. Thanks a lot for this, Peter. And we'll come back to the guidelines. Actually, they are currently under development before closing the session. So I think there is really some work to be done indeed. So thanks a lot for this already. We'll get back to these things in a little while. But first, exactly, we also want to hear from Frank Noël. I think you want to go over there. Talking about what is happening in the publication office and actually looking into data and semantics and their role for ensuring smooth implementation of digital-ready policy making. Please, the floor is yours.
Size a little bit. So, dear participants, dear colleagues, first let me start by congratulating the organizers for, as always, a great event, and also thanking them for giving me the opportunity to address you today. It's indeed a great opportunity to address you at a time when the digital government agenda is reshaping both policy making and the legislative process. At a time when digital transformation is no longer just, and my IT colleagues, sorry for just, but not just about information technology. As you seen from the conference program, and as said by Sven a couple of seconds ago, I'm here as director of the Publications Office of the European Union. The Publications Office of the European Union plays a systemic role in the legislative process. It is publishing the European law. So it is making it real, it is making it concrete. And since 2013, the legally binding version of European law is the digital version, which you can access on the EurLex site. So, the Publications Office is by nature at the crossroad of digital transformation, digital government, and the legislative process. I believe that digital government, and maybe also digital-ready policy making, encompasses three dimensions. First, it's about being data-driven. It's about being committed to evidence-based policy making, which means what? Which means supporting policymakers finding and using trustable digital evidence from the design of policies and laws. It's also about ensuring the traceability of this evidence. For instance, we need proper digital citation schemes or permanent digital identifiers. These are areas where the Publications Office is active, but in general, this approach is enshrined in the better regulation agenda of the European Commission. Second, it's about systematically and systemically considering the digital dimension of new policies and laws. So we heard a lot. It's about considering the interoperability impact of new political and legal initiatives. It's also about identifying and managing data assets and data flows to prevent duplication, to streamline data gathering. So here you can think about once-only principle, about what we heard also, legislative, financial, and digital statement, and it also has to do a lot with standards, and you will hear a lot about standards in what I'm going to say. And third, it's about exploiting digital transformation. Digitally transforming our organizations is obviously the engine of what we are discussing today. So just like what Austria did between the European institutions, we are, for instance, modernizing and automating the interinstitutional legislative process. How do we do this? We are standardizing, so standards again, the definition of legislative documents and of metadata that are exchanged through initiatives like, maybe you heard about AKN4EU, Acoma and TOZO, and the European Legislative Identifier. So, we have three dimensions: being data-driven, systematically and systemically considering digital dimensions of new policies and laws, and exploiting digital transformation. I see some common elements in those dimensions. I'm talking here about the critical importance of managing data assets. I'm also talking about the crucial role of standards and semantics. And there is also the essential question of trustworthiness. So data Data are obviously the underlying element in all what we are discussing and what I said. We need data as evidence. We are exchanging data between our respective organizations. And ultimately, when we talk about delivering impactful cross-border public services, we are talking about providing the right data at the right moment to the right audience for a given purpose. So data management is definitely a domain where the public sector must continue investing massively. To exchange this data, we obviously need to agree on what we exchange, how we exchange them, and also, very importantly, on what these data represent. You see me coming, right? We need standards across the board. So, without standards, no large-scale interoperability is possible. We need standards for data representation, we need standards for data exchange mechanism, and we need standards for data semantics. Well, for semantics, it should be obvious to all of you, because we are in SEMIC, and semantic is in the title. So sometimes it helps stating the obvious. So it's absolutely key to agree on what data means. Just let's take a concrete example. If we are exchanging some dates, it must be clear if we are talking about adoption date of a law or about the application date. It makes a huge difference, right? So these elements are even more essential now, because what we observe is an evolution in the intensity of machine-based data access as opposed to human web-based access to data. And even more so at a time when artificial intelligence is transforming our IT and business landscape. So these are building blocks on top of which the Publications Office is, for instance, spearheading the creation of the European legal data space. Concretely speaking, what are we talking about? We are defining and sharing reference data assets. We are, together with some of you, again, defining standards, such as the Accomaintoso for EU to structure legal texts. We are also providing access points for machine-to-machine interactions to allow you to access massive amount of legal data. And we are also exploring ways of extracting structured information from legal texts as the basis for future services. So let's have dreams. Let's think about real-time legal compliance checking, or about services allowing businesses to get a consolidated list of provisions they have to comply with to run a cross-border activity while being sustainable. Why not? In fact, our respective organizations are today setting up the interoperability building blocks to enable this type of services. And at the very end, what do we want? We want to be trusted. Trust is the cornerstone of all what we do. We want citizens and businesses to trust that our policies and laws are based on evidence that they can check. In the age of disinformation, we want to provide trusted source of public data. So just think for a few seconds about losing access to a trusted source of European law. Quite scary, no? This is the reason why the journey towards a next-generation digital government and digital-ready policymaking is challenging. Okay, it's challenging, but it is imperative. So we must therefore question ourselves, what are the gaps in skills, in open-mindedness, in awareness that we need to bridge within our organizations and between our organizations. So let us be the architects of a future where digital government is not just a concept, but a reality for European citizens and businesses. Thank you.
Fantastic. Many, many thanks, Frank. Very, very good also to understand a bit more the important role of the Publication Office, and really thanks for sharing already what's currently going on. Maybe also as an immediate follow-up question, you were talking about these three pillars, now the evidence-informed, the digital, and also this transformative element. How much do you see that the public sector in the EU is ready to advance on these three pillars, and where do you see main weaknesses or gaps to be addressed urgently?
Okay. Well, in fact, I think we are ready to embark because we have already embarked into this. It's already, to some extent, happening. Digital transformation, I guess we are all striving for transforming digitally our organizations. That's quite clear. We have heard a lot about taking into account the digital dimension. We heard concrete examples. We heard also about the legislative, financial, and digital statement, which is coming. And for data, now I think we have all understood that data needs to be managed as assets and no longer as just electric impulses stored in databases. So that is to some extent already happening, but we are not yet there. Why? Because we are in a fastly changing environment, so we always need to question our skill sets and then maybe skills gaps, and we still have gaps. Funding is clearly, and sorry, that's probably one reason why we need to share much more, also because maybe the skills we have, you don't have, and vice versa. And also funding is clearly a challenge. I guess we all share the same budgetary context, which is a second excellent reason to share a solution. And at the end, we need a cultural shift, a shift in mindset to have this sharing as one of our main preoccupations, and for that we need political will, but also some concrete steps.
Very good, very good. Thanks a lot. Thanks already to all four of you. I think already we were getting quite deep into the topic of digital ready, and we have explored a lot of different dimensions. But I don't want to go into the discussion we will have then in a few minutes, before also listening to Cécile about the workshop of yesterday. So there is Cécile Gouache working as a business analyst and supporting Digit's unit on interoperability and digital government. And we'll get a quick summary from the workshop yesterday, but I heard you also have a question for our panels. And while Cécile is talking, please have a look at the questions. We have quite a few questions already in Slido, but now it's voting time. Please have a look at these questions. Vote on those. We will pick the top 2 or 3, depending on the time, just after. So please start the voting, but Cécile, the floor is yours.
So, hello, thank you for giving the word of the workshop. So it was a really great workshop, and I would like to really to thank first my colleague Alessio Nardin, who was really excellent in preparing it, and then also all the speakers who shared with generously all their insights, and I could see among themselves already after their presentations that they started collaborating on sharing even more. So really thank you very much to all of you. So this workshop was really echoes all what was said just now. We started and it was all along the digital-ready policy-making journey. So we started with the review process of legislation, and we had insights from an OECD member who was contracted by Denmark, thanks to technical support infrastructure funding, to provide with a methodology to identify where to start with in the legal acquis. And so it was really good showing the steps, and I cannot do the whole, so please go and check the video of this workshop. So it gives a lot of insights on how to address it, this big elephant to eat. And then what we could take out of it, or I could take out of it, was about why not come with a digital-ready maturity model. So that was the first very interesting insight that I got out of it. And second, that there are criteria that they're set to prioritize and to reflect where to start with eating the big elephant of the legal acquis, and all these elements, they can really feed the policy design process. And our next speaker was the German representative, and indeed he took on board the work done by Denmark, and what keeps in my ears is proudly reuse. And it was also heard here, don't try to spend again efforts on something that has proven its value. So Germany really reused the concepts and the digital checks that was created by Denmark, flavored it with their own needs, of course, and then they built upon that. And where they went was they showed a successful implementation of digital-ready policy making by addressing early on this the question of to address the digital aspects of policy making and looking at processes. And what they do is visualize these processes, and this gives an approach to share and to discuss with all stakeholders the proposed, so the design of the policy. And they are successful. So they started a bit with a low level of engagement of the policy officers, and now it's really. So I was so happy for them that it's getting there, and I think it can be really also inspiring for other countries. And then we had. We went more into the technical aspects and more the data aspects. And for that, we engaged also with researchers. So we had on board researchers from the Jena University who explained how semantics and artificial intelligence can help precisely to support the visualization of processes. And so they are undergoing a research project on this. And I think it can be also quite inspiring to all of us that they deep dive, so that they continue this work. After that, we were also so grateful for professors of University of Liège and of Bologna who first explained how they were applying artificial intelligence techniques to identify regulatory, so reporting requirements in legal text, in draft legal text. And so there you see we deep dive even more in how technology can support policy design. So it was a bit of a real nice continuation, but on a specific use case of the reporting process, which is in fact, as you may have heard, is really seems burdensome for the whole EU. And so this led to a beautiful demo from Monica Palminari here in the room that showed that semantics and artificial intelligence can really be there in support of the policy drafting to streamline the reporting obligation. So this is a demo on a pilot, but it shows that it has a good potential, and we are really happy that it could. It was possible to show it yesterday. So then, in fact, we from reporting requirements, we even went to a specific domain, which is statistics. And we heard the importance of statistics. I'm too long. Sorry, but just to...
Come to your question in a second or two.
Okay, I just finished with the importance of data spaces, of infrastructure, and statistical node, now I'm in interoperability, statistical node of Spain showed the importance of governance also to ensure interoperability. And out of this, so this workshop was really for me a success. We even got the adherence of Finland now to the the digital-ready policy-making approach. And it came also with a question to you. So we understood that to create coordination and collaboration among member states, it would be really great to have a common understanding and a common language around digital-ready policymaking. And so here, how could we achieve that?
There we go. Thanks a lot, Cécile. And there comes the tricky question. How to achieve a common language about digital-ready policymaking and also help all these many different stakeholders to work together. Any concrete recommendations or reaction? You go give it a start, yeah, please.
Yeah, so create a common understanding, we need first start to talk to each other. And here I extend the invitation, which I made yesterday as well, to indeed get together and discuss it together at the one hand with member states level. So I'm already really happy to have bilaterals and little trilaterals with Denmark, Germany, Austria. And please, if you are around from a member state representation, come join us. But to stay user-centric, I would like to extend this also to our community, because we have a better legislation for smoother implementation, or soon to become digital-ready policy-making community where anyone could shape this discussion. And then to come to a common understanding here, I see quite some similarities with working in multidisciplinary teams, by the way, because this is what we heard also during this session. And it sounds easy, but as myself, I'm working in a multidisciplinary team, I now experience that, okay, to get there and have this common understanding, either with different member states and national contexts or between different professional profiles, can be indeed challenging. So my little take here is, first and foremost, invest in it. So it's kind of investment. For that, you need a culture, a kind of sponsorship that it's worth to do. But invest in it and set, of course, clear goals, what to achieve in this case, kind of common understanding what is digital-ready policy making. Externalize the assumptions, because different participants in that discussions just take things very natural. If you talk to a generalist and ask her to create some kind of implementation plan, it will look totally differently like an IT implementer would do it. So externalize the expectations, dare to use tools like Germany visualization tools, for example, and strive for simplification. So each and the actor could commit, okay, let's keep it simple. So this is maybe what could help here.
Quite a go already at an answer. Somebody wants to add? Frank Leimann, please.
Fully agree with what Sophia said, that you need to start by talking to each other. It goes without saying. The only thing I would like to add is don't reinvent the wheel. EIF has a module that talks about legal interoperability. I mean, this has been created together with all the member states and all the stakeholders. Continue building on that, I think, would be my best way to have this in reality.
Excellent. Anything to add, Peter or Frank Noel? Perfect.
Well, I mean, from the legal point of view, it's rather already foreseen in Article 15 and 16 of the Interoperable Europe Act, which establishes the board and the Interoperable Europe community. So we should channel those common understandings with those entities or bodies or communities we are establishing there. Of course, talk to each other, but not only find common understanding, but put it on the concrete basis and put it into some joint guidelines, joint understandings. We need to update the EIF anyway. This needs to be done, and it needs to be more concrete. So let's go for building such joint understandings and common understandings with our communities we're establishing there.
Very good. Yeah, please, if you want to add, go ahead.
Thank you. So, in fact, from what I hear, we need the talk. And this, in a way, we have already the Interoperable Europe Act, which is a stepping stone for showing the political will. But we also need to walk the talk, which is what Frank was saying and Peter as well, reusing. But now we need to go one step further in being concrete. So it means we need to know about the solutions that are existing. So we need this interoperability, I don't know, Europe solutions and portals. So, I mean, I could conclude easily by saying we need to implement the Interoperable Europe Act. We need to be serious about its implementation.
Very nice, very nice. But also I liked your point before when you were saying actually maybe sometimes you don't have the skills in-house, but by talking to each other you find those which may have complementary skills. I think there is also some room for collaboration, but also benefiting from different competences.
On this, I think when we collaborate, we need to start collaboration by accepting that we are all ignorance, instead of starting by the fact that we all know. And if we start, knowing that we are ignorance, but we are lucky because our partners know, then we will have made a huge step forward.
Well, that's a good one. Learning to be, understanding our own ignorance, and also what Zsofia was saying before, on giving away some of the assumptions we may have in our daily work. Very good. I think with this, I would then move to questions from the audience. And people were very busy voting, basically. We see it coming in here. We have a top voted question with 18 votes, which is quite substantial, I'd say. So I'll pose this question to all four of you. So from your point of view, what would be the ideal first 24 months? So the first 2 years of the Interoperable Europe Act having come into force. What does this ideally mean for digital-ready policymaking? And for Frank Noël, the date is 2 years after entering into force. So we have a precise time to start from. Any takers for this one? Just go ahead. Yeah.
First of all, we need to get organized. Yeah? And getting organized for me means that we need to clearly communicate to those who will have to do the assessments and those who have to comply to these rules, really understand what's at stake and what needs to be done to be compliant. So, and we should make that as simple as possible. Then the scope is, of course, very broad. Yeah. So I would first go for those, for instance, companies that are already cross-border interactive and do assessments there before try and get all the one company people bothered with this paperwork. So prioritize, I would say, would be a good thing to do, and then see wherever you are 24 months later.
Very good. So prioritizing, stepwise approach. Who else wants to add? Zsofia, please.
Yeah, so of course, what would be ideal for the first 2 years of implementation of ACT is one thing, and what is specifically for digital-ready policymaking, which is implied in the question, is another, and of course I'm more interested in that bit. So I confirm Peter's understanding that digital-ready policymaking would only tackle one angle of compliance with the Interoperable Europe Act and interoperability assessments, basically those binding requirements which are enshrined in a legal proposal but not in procurement or setting up IT systems. In-house in the Commission, though, our core business is policy making, so that's why if we are good at that, meaning digital-ready policy making, being able to smoothly ensure compliance with the interoperability assessment, this would be very nice. So let's say this would be my wish for the next 2 years. And on a personal term, I'm really, really looking forward to this kind of learning exercise, because I'm humble here. This will be kind of iterative process where we do our best from our team side. We approach our own policy teams and IT teams and ask their involvement and openness. And in a kind of iterative way, we will try to make this process better and better. And I'm really looking forward to learn from that.
Fantastic. Right spirit coming up here. Very good. You want to add, Peter? You don't have to, you can. But
just a sentence. I tend to agree with Frank and the stepwise approach there, and to keep it simple, especially for the for the first 24 months, because if we start too sophisticated with genius tools and catalogs and whatsoever, I know that these are out there, yeah? But we should not try to put it on track altogether, because that must fail at the end. So we need a pragmatic way of moving forward. When I look at the guidelines in the drafting process right now, these are of course the concerning these concern rather the process, but not yet the content. So what we need, and what we need pretty soon, is the content in terms of concrete checklists, concrete questions, concrete elements you would need for this assessment, and then follow the path of the guideline in terms of process. And to establish all that, this will be quite some challenge for all of the member states for the 24 months. And next step might be then the more sophisticated things, but keep it simple for the start.
Very good. A word of caution here. So to all the implementers in the room, it's a very good suggestion already. Please, Frank.
So I guess we all agree on the stepwise. When Cécile was talking about the elephant, it was reminding me of one of my bosses who liked asking the question, how do you eat a whale with a spoon? And it was bit by bit. And so in the next 24 months, of course, we need to have in place the various elements of the Interoperable Europe Act, the board, all that. But what I would like to see is some concrete realizations. So I think we really need to be pragmatic. If we want to have the thing, the full scale, I'm afraid we will never deliver. So let's have concrete examples.
Very good, excellent. And I think with a slight risk to run a little bit over time, I would like to take a second question from the audience, which was also voted quite highly, especially because it addresses the citizen dimension. I hope that would come up. So this is actually, how can policymakers and implementers ensure that the citizens' voices are represented and integrated through the policy-making process? So if we talk digital ready, how can digital ready help us to actually also better listen to the citizens? And what are the pitfalls to be avoided if you want to speak a bit longer? Frank, please.
For me, it's very clear. The word is co-create. Have your citizen on board at every step of the game. They have very interesting input to give, so you should listen to them. What's the pitfall to avoid? That is that those who are your citizen representatives are also lobby groups. With all respect for lobby groups, but if you have a lobby group around the table, it biases the discussion. So make sure that you have a representation of your citizen, of your population around the table, or, and maybe both, segment your approach, and for each group of citizens have a separated discussion and a solution.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, complementing this, I think it's also important to not to see this a kind of one-off exercise that, okay, we are running a new policy proposal, now we tick the boxes in better regulation in Commission, we'll launch a call for evidence, we launch a one-off stakeholder consultation, and we are done. Instead, here, also digital ready policymaking can help in the sense that if the policy teams work closely with the implementation teams, basically the implementers have much more first-hand feedback and contact and views of the citizens as well, and this needs to be channeled continuously. So already feeding and understanding what is the problem at hand to solve. And eventually, I assume that digital technologies could also help and open new ways of involving and co-creating. And maybe, Sven, you know more. I heard about the Sevilla process. So I know that even the Commission is looking into new ways of consulting the external world, let's say, on proposals.
Thanks. Agree with Frank again. There is quite some risk of biasing when you collect you collect the views outside there. We see it from the Commission public consultations sometimes where there might not be overwhelming size of responses, and the question simply is this a representative message which is sent there? If, I don't know, like 100 companies all over Europe are responding to some public consultation, so is this representative for, I don't know how many 100,000 companies out there? So we need to be careful. Of course, the involvement and the co-creation element is very important, but you need to somehow evaluate what comes in here, how straightforward it is, how biased it might be, etc.
Thank you, very well.
So just some complementary remarks. First of all, we have to recognize that this is challenging. And here, okay, with Sofia, we represent European institutions. So when you are talking about citizens, you are talking about fairly big number of people. And the second remark is that we have a tendency to talk about citizens as a homogeneous group, you know, the citizens. But when it comes to policy making, we first of all have to clearly identify the audience, which part of those citizens are we targeting or talking to. And then we can start. And still, it will be challenging.
Very good, very good. Thanks a lot for these answers. But taking the chance, Frank Noel, that you have the mic, do you want to have any final statements before we are closing our session today?
I will just repeat, let's be serious about the implementation of the Interoperable Europe Act.
Great. Peter?
Yeah, let's keep it simple and stepwise.
Very good. Sofia?
Maybe just a little longer because I couldn't resist to look at the last question.
No.
What is the concrete link between digital-ready policymaking and semantics? And guys, this is really the whole our session's about. So we haven't emphasized enough. We need you. We need the data experts. We need the semantic experts. So policies, on the one hand, mandate wisely standards and formats. On the other hand, the digital-ready tools like any new interoperability assessment template or whatever has the right format. So there are links, and we are really keen to mingle in the break and explore it further.
And there is topic for SEMIC 2025.
Absolutely.
The many months in between. Frank?
Let's not forget why we are doing all this work. Yeah, we're trying to make life of our citizens and our industry easy. Yeah, as public sector, that's our role. Now, even if on the journey we are digitalizing, I think legislation is there, sometimes needs to be fine-tuned. Infrastructure is there, sometimes needs to be upgraded. But the biggest challenge is to make sure we have our citizens on board, that they trust what we build, and consequently that they use it. So I think that's a focus I want to keep in everything I do.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And therefore, slowly now closing the session, I would like to get the last, there should be a QR code for a survey. I would like to get this also up. So before handing back to the host of the entire event, I would like to just say that at the moment there is a small survey going on. You also find QR codes all around. And this is actually about these interoperability assessments that have been mentioned a few times. And also Peter was asking for, get this definition right. There are currently guidelines developed for these interoperability assessments. And the guidelines are developed in co-creation with volunteers from member states. And we try to get together piloters that also test a first version of the guidelines to get feedback. And this should then help to adopt the first version of these guidelines in December this year by the first meeting of the Interoperable Europe Board. And we count on all of you, and especially the people which were in this session, to also provide your views in it. And following that survey, it's actually a way that everybody can contribute. So please have a look at that survey, fill it in, and help us also in the development of the guidelines. And with this, I stop. I thank a lot to everybody, to all our fantastic 4 panelists, to Cécile, to Alessio, which helped a lot in the background and you didn't know, but of course also IT support, local organizers. Fantastic session. Thank you very much. Big round of applause for everyone, and then we are getting here.
And I would like to thank you, Sven, for I would like to thank Sven as well for a very skilled moderation. A very interesting panel indeed. What I took from this session are indeed some rather impressive numbers on the accomplishments of the Belgian presidency, but also quite a bit of work still on our plates when it comes to interoperability assessments, proactive design of new legislation, and standardization of data and semantics. And I also clearly heard that we're not only invisible, we're also ignorant, and we need to indeed acknowledge our own ignorance. Now, before we break for lunch, I'd like to draw your attention again to the exhibition which is taking place at the Silver de Magritte and the Delvaux foyers just outside. I do remind you to take the opportunity of our photo booth. Glad to add that we also organized a fresh area. Fresh means fruit, but also means air conditioning for those of you who are in dire need of a cold breeze of air, we have a fresh area just outside. We will continue our parallel sessions after lunch. So a session on innovation in public services will take place in the ARC. A track on interoperability in and between data spaces will be organized in the Silver Room and on the Silver Channel. And I am looking forward to meeting you again here at 2 o'clock sharp to discuss the potential of sharing and reusing IT solutions to boost European interoperability. Enjoy your lunch and see you soon.